Karen, Zoom, essential, unprecedented times. But where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Psych, where is Kevin? I don't know. Ask Catherine O'Hara. 2020 was a year filled with, depending on the person, more, less, or the exact same insert catchy word here as in years past. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Fervent 4. Did you know that only 4% of businesses ever cross the annual $1 million revenue mark? Hello, I'm Zack Miller, author of this book. Yes, there are some words in it. It's called Anomaly. And with me today, I have my co-host, Tim Ryan, lead man at startreal.org. Thank you so much for joining us. The Fervent 4 is a weekly show. Actually, it would be great if we could start calling this the Fervent 5 or 6. Wouldn't that be spectacular? The Fervent 4 or 5 or 6 is a weekly show each and every Thursday at 11 a.m. dedicated to sharing insights into growing a world-class business no matter the climate, remote, pivot, pandemic. What will the word of 2K21 be? Well, hopefully it'll be 2 words. Zack Miller. That was like my best intro ever. It only took like 37,000 episodes, but I looked up yesterday, what were the words of the year, right? And the first word I think I saw was Karen, and I was like, I don't understand why it's always Karen. Why can't there be a Kevin with it? And then Catherine O'Hara with Schitt's Creek being such a popular show at the end of this year. I felt that was appropriate to put that there. So I don't know.
Yeah, I recently put something out on social media asking people what their phrase of the year was, just because to me it's not a real Zoom call unless someone says you're on mute. That
I like to call them Zoomies.
Yeah,
you're on a Zoomie.
Yeah, during these unprecedented times.
You know what's interesting, and I'm going to give them free marketing here, but a company like Zoom, who had been around, but like they just absolutely they got the Xerox effect of that, right? Like I'm on a Zoom call, even if you weren't even on a Zoom call, right? And so I'm not exactly sure what the correct vernacular is on a word that describes something that isn't actually that thing, because it's really just a telecommuting video call. Yet we use the word Zoom, right? This is the same thing as a Zoom call in theory, right? And so good for them to see that escalate. Were they a publicly traded company before?
They were, and I'm trying to think. I jumped in on the Zoom train.
Oh, you did?
Oh yeah, right. I think it was in March. I don't even remember what the stock price was then, but it was a nice little return.
What was your word?
No, anytime that your company turns into a verb, you've done something well. You Google something, you Zoom, you.
Is that all it is? It's just a verb? You TiVo something?
Yeah, I mean, you're in good shape at that point.
Yeah, I always thought there was a fancy word for it. Like
there might be. I'm just not. I'm not that.
But it's the Xerox effect. It's the Google effect. It's you're TiVoing, even though you're just whatever that was, kneeling and praying. Yes. So it's interesting. So what do you think your word of 2K20 was?
We didn't
talk about any of these questions beforehand either, everyone. Yeah. So they're going to be all like we always do, all off the cuff and see. And so if you're listening, what are your words of of last year? What's your word of this year going to be? Like what are words that you think are ridiculous?
Yeah, I mean it's and I was guilty when you go back and looking at some of the earlier shows. I mean, the whole new normal thing was in hindsight ridiculous because
the new normal.
Yeah,
I didn't say that.
But to me, it's one of those things: control what you can control, and that I focus on the things that I'm in control of, or that I can dictate or try to dictate the outcome. And if I can't, then I don't lose sleep over it. I don't. I just don't focus my energy on it. So, just one of those things.
I would say my year was like. Just off the cuff thinking like consistent, right? Deliberate.
Yep.
right? The things that I wanted to do that started the year, I was habitual about doing them. I didn't allow things to change off that, even though I think a lot of people got a quote unquote hall pass to pause things, right? But I think that when things when you hit a roadblock or you hit a moment in time when a boulder's in the way, it's your decision to do something with. And as I'm just talking this through with you, I'm thinking about March 1, 2020. And we both participated in a monumental day for you, where you qualified for the Boston Marathon, 26.2 miles of absolute heartbreak. Like what I did there, heartbreak. Tim qualified. What was your time? Like 3:12 or something? 3:10?
Yeah, 3:12 and change.
Mine was a little bit faster than that at like 5:40. But I could probably do that a little bit faster now. But what's interesting about that day is I decided, or one of the things that I was looking forward to when doing the marathon was to hit that wall. Where would I hit that wall? Hit that wall. And then what could I do to get through it so that I could take that experience of going through something that is absolutely miserable, which, by the way, it happened at like mile 20, right by the Nolan Trail, which is, I think, historically where it hits for a lot of people, which is interesting that it hit there, because me being the anomaly, I don't like it when things hit when others hit in the same way. But I hit it, and getting through that was really interesting. I wouldn't say that I was ever thinking about quitting, but I definitely thought that I would. It was just a weird experience to go through. Do you walk? And then I finished, in 5 hours and 40 minutes, which is an absurd amount of time, by the way, to think about it. But I did it. I did what I said I was going to do, and I think there's a lot of learning experiences from that. So, when you did yours, what were do you just have physical goals during that? Do you think about it from a life perspective, from a business perspective? Because I love to parallel them together. I love to relate them together and try to learn from both.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. It's all about mental toughness when you're doing the marathon. I mean, and that's why I love the connection between business and marathon, or any endurance type of running, sport, race, whatever you want to call it, just because that just happens to be the last day of training is when you run the race. But it's like, it's the 12, 15, 18 weeks of grinding through your training plan in order to get to that point. And just the whole mental mind game that goes through, waking up every single morning when it's freezing cold. I was looking back at my last year's activity, and I was stunning to think that last year at this time I was week 5 into marathon training. And and as we know, I mean, it's this morning the wind chill was 27 degrees. So just to have that toughness from a physical standpoint, but from a mental standpoint, to get out there and grind every single day in order to be prepared for the big race. I mean, that's everything. And that is so applicable to business, because every single day you got to grind, and you got to do the things that you don't want to do. And you've got to do things that may not make sense at the time, but eventually when everything comes together, you're going to be successful, because you have the toughness to push through that mile 20.
Huh. That's interesting. Push through the mile 20. That made me think of something, so I had to write that down. I was like, that's interesting.
Because for those people that aren't familiar, when you run a race,
marathon's 26.2 miles. That's
or even a half marathon, you have what's called pace groups. So it's someone that's carrying a sign around that says,
"Not if you're really slow."
You have different pace groups that are there, and for me, I knew that I had to do better than a 3:15 in order to qualify for Boston. And there was a 3:15 pace group. So really the whole time for me was making sure that I never saw that 3:15 pace group go by.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
And you also do something from a music standpoint, right?
I do. I made sure that my playlist was 3 hours and 15 minutes long, and I knew that if I heard a song twice, then I just busted. So just mental games for me to play in order to stay ahead. And it's really interesting when you have those turnaround points, and you can see the people behind you, so that you can kind of gauge how much of a cushion that you have. I mean, it's a plus, but it's also a minus as well, because if you've got a 2-minute barrier that you can take your foot off the gas for a little while and try to recover.
So do you look back and see if you could see that? Because what is it, a guy with a flag or something moving around?
Yeah, I mean, I did. There's only a couple times during the race that you could do that, and one was super early on. I think at mile 2, when that's when we saw one another, and then.
You mean like a legit turnaround where you actually see someone? Right. Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things. I think that you started asking if there was any times that I was gonna walk during that course, and it's one of those things, man. It's like, from a mental standpoint, once you walk the first time, you're done. It's the kiss of death. Like, before, my strategy was always, hey, I'm just gonna walk through the
drinks then,
or the water, Gatorade stations. But man, you can't. Me personally, I can't do that. I just got to keep on powering right through.
Well, not to mention just the acceleration and deceleration of getting through something like that. Again, like, there's just the compound effect of that. And so it's interesting. So consistent and deliberate would be my words of 2K20. I wanted to hit a very specific, like, from a fitness perspective, I had a goal time of what I wanted to do in a race. That race got canceled, whatever. I created my own. And when I ended up doing that race, I was 20 minutes faster than my goal time. And honestly, I thought my goal time was absolutely absurd to think that I could do something that fast, at least in the physical fitness that I was in when I made it. So that was cool to see that. And then this year, my goal for that is an even faster time. That is going to take some really, really insane workouts to get to. Like, it's just like, wow. Like,
but man, I mean, it's so, it's so mental. And it's one of those things. It's even going back to business. I mean, you have a training plan, and then arguably you may have a business plan or some sort of business model canvas, something that just identifies the milestones that you want to hit, and you need to work towards that. And you can't question your training, and you can't question the things that you put out in order to achieve the things that you set out to accomplish.
So with that in mind, my word of the year is going to be compound, from the compounding perspective, right? Which is, things, I don't know what the exact, definition is, but it's if you put in something today, it will be worth more later, right? And I feel like compounding from a word choice is something that's only used in the financial world, where in the business world, in the fitness world, and the relationship world, and in the family world, it's the exact same thing. It's like, if you put in a little bit every day, that thing is going to get better and better and better. And so I remember when I wrote Anomaly, I wrote about that for like a paragraph, and that's it. And it's something that I look at and I go, I wish I would have written more about that, because I feel like it's not talked enough about, even just a relationship perspective, right? Like, when you and I met 8 years ago, when did we figure out we met? 2012. So 9 years ago, almost 8.5 years ago. It happened because you reached out, right? Then we met, and that, planted the seed, if you will, right? And then it took a couple more times for us to plant those seeds over and over. And then it just starts accelerating in that hockey stick, the way that people talk about. But it doesn't happen if you don't do that. And so if you really think about 2020 as well, it was the year of people getting ahead, where I think a lot of people probably got on the back burner, took a hall pass, paused. A lot of people you're going to see that maybe you hadn't seen in a while really got ahead, because they didn't allow someone else to dictate their their life.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge point in the sense of a lot of people have this myth in their head that only the big are going to survive, like the big companies or the companies that have the most money and resources. But as we saw this year, it's the first people to react. It's the people that can move the fastest are the ones that are going to do well. You don't necessarily need money and resources to be quick to first to move.
Well, that story alone, let's think about a company like Dirty Buffalo, a company that you and I both like, right? So Dirty Buffalo is a company that has 2 or 3 physical locations. It's like a wing joint. That's probably what they would call themselves. They make really good buffalo wings. And I felt like they were constantly trying to get ahead of the curve during all of this. And what's interesting, and the reason I say big versus small in this, is because their business model moving forward, it seems like, is acquiring the Ruby Tuesdays and Applebee's like single standing facilities and putting in one of their locations into a place like that. One of them just got announced across the bridge from where I reside. And I'm super stoked about that, even though I don't eat meat anymore. That's a completely different story. I can figure out a way to eat some chicken wing sauce and fries or cauliflower. Right. What the hell am I saying? But, that's Applebee's, Ruby Tuesdays, big brands that most people know about. And then there's Dirty Buffalo, who no one really knows about, yet they're able to push forward as a small business and actually capitalize off of big brands.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that we talked about a lot last year was, it's the wild, wild west. Go try something new. Nobody knows what's going to work and isn't going to work. Don't be afraid to fail. If it works, you're ahead of the game. If it doesn't work, learn from it. Try something different.
You're going to fail even when things are going well, right? It's like, to me, it's always like that thing that I spent more time on did far less than the thing that I spent 2 ounces of time on. Right. And it always ticks me off because I'm like, oh my God, that thing should be so much better than it is. And then some random thing does better. And I'm just like, I put no time into that.
Yeah, I was just listening to someone today on my run, and he was talking about, and I can't think of his name right now, but he was saying that he wants to be failing at least 30 to 40% of the time. And if he's not failing 40% of the time, then he's not trying hard enough.
Yeah, I think the word failing is interesting, mostly because I feel like you're not really failing, but it is like the buzzword that people use.
Right. Well, geez, you look at Chick-fil-A, man. I think the only time that the drive-through is not wrapped around the building is on Sundays.
Or when they're closed, yeah.
And it's just stunning to me. Now they have tents set up that cars are driving through.
Why do they have tents?
I would assume is to keep the people out of their employees out of the rain. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how their new locations, if they're going to be designed differently. And I think the Starbucks is already talking about what their new build outs are going to look like.
In what regards? Like why?
Just in terms, I think of like just seating in general, and if you can do different smaller pop-up things that don't require the tables and chairs.
I think oftentimes we forget to think about, okay, like how much of this when something is in a good market, right? And that market doesn't necessarily have to be a city; it can just be like things were really good, right? And so you have a lot of fat. Typically when things are going well, and oftentimes when you are more broke, or market isn't doing as well, or commerce is different, you learn a lot more in down times rather than high times because you see it with a different lens,
right?
And you think about Starbucks. When I had an office in downtown Norfolk, there was a Starbucks that was really small and always seemed busy. Then they moved literally 1.5 blocks down the street to probably a more popular area, tripled the size, and it was almost like it was never that busy except in that morning time. It also reminds me of this other place, Empire, which I don't know if you ever went to. It was on the corner of like Tazewell and Granby Street, maybe. I could be my streets, but it literally was like a 30 person bar where it had maybe 5 or 6 tables and then like 12 seats at the bar. And they were always busy. They were only open at night from 5 to close, whatever. And then they moved literally 3 doors down to a 150 person unit. And the place died within weeks.
Wow.
Literally nothing changed other than the size. Right. And so sometimes I think people think really like, you got to have this super luxurious big thing when it's like,
right.
Really? I mean, the same goes with like with gear. Do you need the fanciest of computers? Do you need the fanciest of microphones to do these things? It's like, do you? Or can this $50 microphone get the job done and no one can really notice?
Right. Right.
And that's something that I always preach and teach to people is like, hey, like, start doing the habit first.
Yep.
Then if you recognize that you want to be doing something different or that you notice that something could be better with a little bit better gear, then potentially look into that. But don't just buy the fancy gear to buy the fancy gear. I was just listening to the Minimalist podcast, that a very popular Netflix show. And they just came out with a new one recently. And I was just watching that because I find myself to be a minimalist, even though if you looked at this office, you would probably disagree with that. But I don't like to buy things. I like to only buy things that I use, right? Which I think is very in line with the minimalist world. And they said something along the lines of, we often buy the fancy thing because we're marketed towards that fancy thing, when really all we need is this. And this can probably get the job done. And so I think that's interesting from a business perspective too, where how much more can you be doing with less and then have a lot more profit or extra money just around to do other things with that you didn't think about because you weren't spending money on some elaborate thing that didn't get the job done.
Well, or even just having the courage or belief in yourself to start out small, knowing that you have an end goal in mind. I mean, you look at the story of Netflix. And they started with the mail subscription service, which those that have been around a while, they know about. You get the DVDs in the mail, you watch it, throw it in the mail, and then a couple days later, you get another DVD in the mail.
Did you do that? Did you used to do that?
Yeah. But then you look at
in college. That's how I never wanted to go to those classes. I took like a movie class. The fact that you can do that and get credit for it. Not that I didn't spend the money for it, because clearly you spent the money for it. But that was one of the things I did as a communication minor. Is I took some stupid class like that, and I didn't want to go to class and watch the movies because that's all you do is you watch the movie and then they quiz you afterwards, like the next class. So I just Netflixed those movies, watched them there.
Yeah. Well, and then they struggled with the whole streaming side. But you look at where they've gone from streaming. The content wasn't good when it first came out. Then they expanded the content. Bandwidth became increasingly better and better and better. And now that even the streaming side is an afterthought in the sense of now they're known for the different shows that they're making and producing. The Orange is the New Black and 13 Reasons Why, all that kind of stuff. I mean, they're now a production.
$8 billion in original content in 2018 alone. I said a few years ago, watch, because at the time there really wasn't A-list players on there yet. I said, wait till you get the A-list players in there, and then it's going to be game over.
Yeah.
Right? So the only A-list player that I feel like they don't have yet is The Rock, but I think he's creating a Netflix movie at this point. And because George Clooney's been on there, Sandra Bullock, and countless others. And so, I mean, that's a scary thing for other people, and everyone's in the OTT game. But the interesting thing about that is, streaming was terrible back in the day. But I think you have to look at that with the lens that we were talking about before, where it was, okay, but who is doing this well? And the answer was no one.
Right.
No one was streaming video well. I mean, hell, if you wanted to move something at that point, I think about it, a movie, if you wanted to move a movie from one thing to another, it would take you 2 days via your normal like computer to do that. And now you want to tell me that you can stream it?
And the other thing that going back with what you're saying, that it comes down to is having the endurance. Going right back to the sports analogy, having the endurance to see something through and sticking with it, knowing and believing what your end goal is, and just not stopping until you get there.
How do you? So that's a great word. A lot of people I think there's even a TED talk that said people quit too early and things like that. I don't know what the statistics are. That's me spitting on a Zack stat. But let's say that that's true, right? That people quit everything too early, right? How do you push through? How do you have more endurance? What can someone do to not throw in the proverbial towel too soon?
Well, I mean, I know that you and I spend a lot of time talking, verifying, validating, talking each other off the ledge, so to speak. And I mean, you really gotta surround yourself with like-minded people, so that you know that you're not crazy. I mean, that to me is a really big piece.
Like-minded people that will tell you the truth, though.
Right, right.
Yeah, that's the.
Yeah, and and you clown on me too, quite a bit. I mean, that's the new thing on the wall there with Elon, man. It's just like, dude, no one has a stronger pain tolerance than him. And
for him, clown because you're a Tesla fanboy.
Yeah, because I'm an Elon fanboy. But man, the
you didn't buy the flamethrower though, so you can't be that big of a fanboy. But you thought about it, I guess.
Yeah, and I didn't buy the tequila either, but. But gosh, I mean, how many times did he almost go broke? Even as recently as a couple of years ago, when the Model 3 was just was going through its production hell. Yeah.
So you consume a lot more of his information, and Gavin backstage says Blockbuster turned down an offer to buy Netflix for $50 million. 2000. That's ridiculous. Yeah. So another thing that made me think about that is I'm a big wrestling fan. Vince McMahon bought his competitor who had been beating him for a long time for only $2 million. And he has access to that entire streaming. He basically spent the $2 million to have the catalog of all the events and the content from that. And now that was in around 2001 itself. And so like you hear it for $2 million. I mean, I'm sure there's concerts that cost $2 million to put on. Mm-hmm. Apparently some of the wrestlers now, I think Chris Jericho, one of the most popular wrestlers in the world, says, I would have bought it for $2 million. I mean, it's crazy to think that. Right. So you listen to a lot of Elon, or you, let's just say that you consume a lot of Elon information. Like, what are some of the things that he says that he pushes, that he uses to push through? Because I think that's a great way to look at someone who has done it multiple times. He's part of the PayPal mafia and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Like, what are some of the things that he's done in the past to keep it when?
Yeah, I mean, it even really starts back when he was a teenager. Like his very first job, one of his first jobs was, if I remember right, it was like mining or something in South Africa, where like people wouldn't last long because the working conditions were so difficult.
He's from South Africa?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he managed to stay in that position longer than anybody, just because he had that pain tolerance. And then he moved to Canada. Then from Canada, he moved to the U.S. But during that, I mean, him and his brother, they just had an office when one was working, the other was sleeping on the couch. So he had that pain tolerance to go through that. And then most recently, billionaires seem to have such a bad rap today that, you're rich and that's a bad thing. Well, it's like, one, he has risked more than anybody else has. And so with them to throw it right back in their face, he sold all of his homes. So he now doesn't own a home because he's like, look, I'm using this money as the overall mission to be interplanetary, to go to Mars, and I don't want any possessions on Earth, so to speak. And now he doesn't own a home, so it's not like he's spending this money on all this lavish stuff. I mean, everything is going right back into the SpaceX mission.
I always think it's interesting when people badmouth very wealthy people when they don't actually look at how much are those individuals personally giving back. Oh, well, this guy's, insert whatever really negative word here. And then actually that guy is given, or girl has given millions of dollars to countless organizations. It's all, right. Even the Amazon guy, Bezos, we realized had given tens of millions of dollars to organizations.
Right. Yeah, and I think that the other thing too that I think that Elon mentioned in tweets a while ago that all of his donating that he does anonymously. So
but, at the same time, why do these people have to do it, right? I mean, they took the risk. You didn't.
Right.
You could have done it, right?
And because I think that like one of the things that broke a couple of years ago when the whole Flint, Michigan water thing was going on, he donated Chromebooks to every student in Flint. And that's stuff like that never caught the media attention. Just because negative media always gets more clicks than the positive stories. So we'll just gloss over something like that and focus on something negative.
I've been thinking about finding ways, just as like a thing to do every once in a while, is to take negative-based articles and spin them into positive-based pieces of content, just to show people how easy it would be to spin a story like that.
Right.
And I just haven't decided if I love doing that enough yet. But there's been a couple stories that I've consumed over the last month or two. Such I as a former journalist, I know what I'm supposed to do, right? I don't consume a lot of media in that kind of way because I don't feel like what I was taught and what I believe to be true journalism happens most of the time anymore. But how I could get it back to doing that would be an interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, like this is that story is actually very positive. It very, very positive. You guys are being manipulated to consume that in a different way.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. I was listening to Jason Calacanis, one of his podcasts a while within the last couple of weeks, and he has a journalism background. He started as a journalist. I think it was the Silicon Valley Reporter was the name of his.
Created inside a bunch of different things inside Silicon Valley, inside tech. Yeah.
But he was saying that from his point of view and his experience and expertise, that best case scenario, reporters know 25% of the real story, and then the other 75% is total speculation.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, I think you have to think about how those individuals are being provided that information, right? So through press release, through the story of the day that they have been deadline based associated with, through a publicist, through someone providing a little bit of information, through a thing that they call MOS, man on street, which is just a random bystander who may or may not have actually been there, but will say something about it. Right. And by the way, they're not an expert in that thing at all. Right. So I always think it's interesting, even just from a business perspective, hearing media talk about business when that person isn't even remotely close to understanding business. Right. Saying negative things about business when it's like, that you clearly don't understand business in that kind of way. I can't think of an example specifically, but as a guy who I feel like I understand both pretty well, have been inside both of them, the business world and the journalism world. I don't even know that I would give them 25% of the information. I would say less than 10%.
Yeah, and that's what he said.
Yeah, it's true because, and it's to no one's fault that that's the way that it goes. But at the same time, I feel like there should be an asterisk next to things saying, hey, only so much of this information has been collected, verified, etc. at this point. And the story that I love to tell in this specific world is the Ryan Lochte story of the Olympics in 2016. So Ryan Lochte, the American swimmer who competed for multiple gold medals in the 2016 Rio Olympics. Something happened overnight, and he alleged that something bad happened to him. And news media, trying to be first to break that news, took him by the word without a ton of verification, only to to be the first one to report that so that everyone would listen to that news organization. To come find out days later when actually the verification process came through, guess what? Ryan Lochte was throwing a load of bollocks out. And he was the one in the wrong, where he was, I believe the story is he was absolutely belligerent and broke into a gas station and did his duty in there all over the place, drunk as a sailor, as they say. And so as I consume information, it's not to bash the media. It's really not. Because I am one of those people, and this is a form of media right here. It's just how can you take as much information, how can you really provide a truly heavily context story and provide it to people who are listening. And I think that's ultimately what's missing most of the time, is that organizations are told to get more out, get that more out faster, and to fact check along the way, and hope the guy that person is telling the truth, basically. Right. Not to mention, I've always been taught, and I think it's true, that both sides of the story need to be in a story. So if you're dealing with something, get this person, it's a business owner and their staff member. Okay. So then you need to get the business owner to say something, the staff member to say something, and then maybe someone else that, the other piece of that is some other expert in that world who has been verified to really understand that, to give real context in there. And somewhere in there, you have this actual story up there. Oh, well, the business owner was trying to save, the rest of his business. So he let go of, 10% of the business. Oh, well, to the outside world, that 10%, those people, that how dare that person do that? When then you have this other outside person, nothing to do associated with that business, that says, actually, this is happening for the long run, for that business to stay there so that all these other things can happen. It's unfortunate that this thing happened to this set of employees, these teammates, absolutely. But actually, when a team downsizes in something like this, that number is actually usually insert statistic here. Mm-hmm. This company here actually is at a far lower statistic. You see how that story is actually presenting a lot better case.
Right.
Here is this business owner fired this person. This teammate says this, and now we all should hate them. When there's no real story of understanding all of that together, and I think that's what's been missing in most of this media world now. And I think it needs to be fixed so that people actually can understand what is happening.
Yeah.
Instead of just throwing out blah all the time.
No,
that's my rants about the media, and I'm done. No, we can keep talking about okay, but I think that's what's missing, right? And it's important.
Well, I mean, so let's just we can take it one step further, and I'll bring it back to, just because I spent so much time on it from a Tesla standpoint. Without a doubt, they were the 2020 stock of the year. I mean, they were up, I don't know, 800, 900%, just unprecedented story that we've never seen before. And the entire time, you had people betting against them. You had people short selling them. I mean, just losing everything. And you would hear all these media stories about they're not going to do well. But during that whole time, I'm just telling everyone there's just no way. And I would just continue to buy more and more Tesla, because it's like, have you ever driven one? Have you ever been in one? Have you ever talked to anybody that owns one? And when you have that many people that just rave about a product, Peloton, Tesla, whatever, there's no way that a company like that is going to go.
Well, Peloton's a great example of what they went through last year.
Right. Apple. Right? I mean, when you have a product that is so good, I mean, that's what all these, they didn't get the full story. And if they would have talked to these people, then the narrative would have been totally different.
But what I presented as a use case shouldn't be that difficult to have something like that.
Yeah.
Right. And it shouldn't, if the idea is to get a story out a day, let's say, which when I worked in news, that's usually what it was, right? So
Mhm.
that's what, 250 news articles a day. And in history, there used to be beats where the person would historically produce media on the same style of thing. So you don't have you only have a meteorologist talking about the weather, right? You only have crime and investigation done by crime and investigation people, sports by the sports person, this city done by this city, technology by this, bio by bio, medical by medical, et cetera, hair by hair, right? Fitness by fitness, right? Are you going to ask a dentist about how to run better?
Right.
That's basically what you're getting. And so also media has First Amendment rights. So then you think that they're trustworthy in these kind of ways. And it's not that they're, I think people think that the media is untrustworthy. And I don't think it's that they're not. It's just that they're not telling the complete story that I think is historically been provided, even though that whole story, and that just means, hey, we need to slow the F down and allow some more context to be in here. Because
so going back to your first question to me about the word of 2020,
context
is 100% me personally. And it
only took 40 minutes, Tim. We got it.
Yeah, well, but it's one of the, I spent a lot of time, a lot of miles thinking. That means I can sum up the world's problems right now, really, really quickly, and listen to it once the show is over. People today, they communicate in a way of being wrong or right. So, and they listen in order to make that judgment if this person is wrong or right. They don't listen to it from a contextual standpoint. And people will just turn you off right away. Nope, I don't agree with you. You're wrong. As opposed to, hey, let me learn. I want to understand the context of why you think this way. So if people were to, so that I can understand, and maybe I might learn something, and then let me tell you why I think the way that I do. If people talked and wanted to communicate in a from a context point of view, everything would be totally different from where we are today. But it's just everything today is about being right or wrong, and that is
but I'm right. But I'm right.
Right. And then if we could just get rid of the share button on social media, then that would change a few things too.
So another way to do this, kind of from a context perspective, is I don't know the number, and I was trying to figure it out really, really quickly, but I didn't know what we were going to talk about 100% here, and this is a number I should have looked at. So please forgive me, Tim, please. But a lot of businesses closed this last year, right? I don't know the number. I've seen numbers anywhere from 15 to 30%. Let's say that's an average of 22%. Okay. Again, Zack stats. 22% of businesses closed in 2020 due to COVID. Did you know that the statistic is actually 20% of businesses close every year? So that's only a 2% increase in businesses closed from those very generalized statistics, right? So the story will be 22% of businesses closed due to coronavirus, when actually 95% of those businesses were going to close anyway, and it's only an increase of 2%.
Yep.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't blame Corona and that this wasn't a bad year. I'm not saying that in any kind of way. I'm just saying that a lot of those businesses were going to close anyway.
Yeah.
And we're using the scapegoat of 2020 to be the reason why that business was going to close. So like when a business was closing 2 days into Corona, March 20th, and blaming Corona, it's like, seems a little premature to be doing.
Well, I mean, this is the thing of the whole startup business world, as you know, it requires execution.
We invested in 13 businesses over a 12-month period. In that 12-month period, I can't think of 3 of those businesses that lasted more than like 9 months. That's like 85% of those businesses.
Yeah. And so all startups, it all is based on execution and being able to execute your business flawlessly. And so let's flip that for a second, that all of a sudden now in 2020, everybody is completely reliant on the government to provide them with some sort of a solution. When in the world has the government ever flawlessly executed anything? Minus maybe the military doing their thing when they're dropping bombs on somebody. But when has the government flawlessly executed anything? And so it comes from testing. Now we transition testing onto the vaccines. I mean, we're sitting back and being reliant on them to provide the answers, where it's like we've got to take the initiative and do some things for ourselves and be that positive change for your own self.
How many people had goals for the year of 2020? And come March 17th, whatever that date was, said, yeah, F it, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I've been wondering this question recently. It's January 7th as we record this. Gyms are usually the big New Year's resolution thing, right? Getting healthy. Right. 2021 is my year. And look, as a former fat kid and still fat today, I get it. Right. I'm not a big fan of resolutions, but I understand that, the reset of the year is a thing. Right.
Right.
Jim White of Jim White Fitness a few years ago, he told me that like 85% of his money is made within 45 days. Within like the 45 days of the end of the year, the beginning of the year is where he makes the majority of his money because it's a recurring subscription model. Right. And he said gyms are the same way. He has a gym, but other gyms are the same way, which means they make all their money right around right now. Think about that. That's absurd. So I've been wondering, are gyms, what's going on with gyms right now? Is that reset happening with people and they're all resubscribing or subscribing for the first time to the gym?
Yeah.
So I've worked out every day for 3 years, actually over 3 years now. Wow, I'm in year 4. I just realized some days way better than others. Definitely some days better than others. And I think this last year was definitely the best year because I eliminated some other things as well. I think that really helped me focus, to be disciplined, deliberate, and consistent. Discipline. I'm going to use that word. A lot of these words. And so I've been interested, and I did my own blind survey by going to the gym. When I go to my local YMCA, I don't go and I don't pump iron. I don't take the yoga class. I don't get on the spin machine. I just go to the pool, and the pool's outside. And recently, I've been allegedly it's heated. That's what they tell me. And so I've been going to the outdoor pool, getting in some laps. And one thing that I love about it is now you have to sign up for a very specific time. So 7:15 in the morning is the time that I've been able to book. And so I booked that a couple of times in the last few days. And I swim in my laps. And as I pull in, I look for all the cars. Okay, there's my data point 1. I swim my laps. I swim my mile, 1.2 miles, get my 2,000 meters in a way slower than Zack Miller used to be pace. Note on that, I realized something about my Garmin watch the other day where it'll tell me how fast I'm doing each lap. I used to be able to do a 50 free in like 22, 23 seconds.
Wow.
Now I'm doing a 25 in that time.
Nah.
That's how slow I am. God, it's terrible. Bring back high school Zack Miller. No. So I leave, and it's a very large parking lot. So it's very easy to find out if it's busy or not.
Well, and I think that this year is...
and I say, okay. And I have 2 data points there. What were you going to say?
No, this year is even worse because, I mean, how bad is it for gym owners or anybody when New Year's falls on a Friday? Because you always start something on Monday, So, I mean, if you're not going to start anything on a Saturday. So now by the time Monday rolls around, it's already January 5th. And at that point, we're 5 days into this. It's over.
Next year, 2022 is going to be my year. But so the data points I took, and no one's at the gym.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting is I think you have to look at that. And I can't remember where I consumed this material. So like when I'm working out, I'll listen to books. I'll listen to occasionally a podcast, something like that. If I'm doing something in my garage, I'll watch like a Netflix movie or something because I have an indoor trainer. Thank you, Dan Gerard. Someone said like you can't fall in love with one specific thing. Because if you do and something happens with that thing, it screws up the cycle. right? So if running is your thing, so actually this is interesting. So they say don't just do one thing, because if it snows, it rains, whatever, it can be you just tell yourself no, and then it rains 2 days in a row, and that habit is not created,
Right.
or it's broken. And so it's interesting at doing as an aspiring triathlete, as I am myself. I find that because there's multiple avenues to do, I'm given more things to choose from if something
Right.
hits the fan, if you will. And so that's you can't just say I'm going to the gym. I think it has to be a more broad thing where I'm going to work out today. Here's a list of 15 things that I can do.
Yep.
Run, cycle, indoor, YouTube yoga, YouTube push-ups, planking, something like that, where it gives you a lot of options, where you can, when that one thing that you want to be doing, you can't do for whatever reason, like the pool has broken this year, right? And that pool is closed. It was okay. I can either go to another pool or I do something else. And I do think that's important.
Yeah, it's I mean, I know that holds true for me. That's why no days off, man, because I know one day will turn into two will turn into four turns into 2 weeks, and then it's tough. It's a grind for everybody, but it's that internal strength. You got to keep grinding.
What day are you at, by the way? And what started that whole thing?
I'm trying to think. I'm at like day 2,400 something. I don't know. 6 years,
7 years,
6 years and 7 months or something like that.
Why'd you start?
Well, I wanted to be a positive influence on the kids. Just showing them that, hey, if you want something, you got to work for it.
And they were what, 11 and 8 at that time?
Yeah. And then to me, the thought of my whole goal was to start at 100 days, or I'm sorry, 30 days. Can I run every day for a month?
And there was 2 miles a day at that point?
Yeah, at a minimum. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then 30 days hit, and I was like, man, maybe I can do 100. Can I do 100?
So you set out saying, I'm going to do 30 days of at least 2 miles running every day.
Yeah.
Do you know how many of those 30 days you only did 2 miles?
I could go back and look. I still have all that.
Was it a lot, you think?
No. Because I generally would always do 4. And even last year I ended up running exactly 2,700 miles over the course of 365 days. So that's like almost 7 miles a day. So, and I think the only time I did 2 miles last year was like the day before the marathon, and then maybe the day after, or the 2 days after the marathon, just because.
It's nice about having other things to do as a guy who's on that cycle himself. I think I hit 1,000 days this year, but just running like on a day before a race, like, it's like, oh God, I gotta do this. Like, to be like, no, my thing says clearly do this.
Yeah, but yeah, so it started at 30. I wanted to see if I could do 100. And then at that point, then someone was like, well, dude, there's this run streak thing where if you can do 365 days, then, that's the next biggest milestone. And then, dude, at that point, it's over, because the thought of starting at 0 again is just a non-starter for me.
So there was a community of people that you had met throughout this process. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, there's other people that I've talked to. They're like, yeah, there's a run streak club, and you in order to be part of that, you have to be able to have done it for 365 days.
Interesting. So then they count by years, not days.
Yeah.
If a business is what if a business called you and they just asked you, hey, can I get some advice for the future? How would that conversation go? I would want,
for me, I would want to, I would want to talk to the founder or whoever's in charge of the company to understand what makes them tick. To me, I think I'm always amazed at how there's some sort of internal struggle or roadblock that they can't overcome in order to get to that next level. And it's just, to me, it's fascinating, the whole psychology behind what makes people tick. And that can hold true for anything, if it's business or sports or public speaking or whatever the case is.
In a positive or negative way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times it's just, just recalibrating, understanding how someone views something, and then learning how to recalibrate their mind in order to think about it in a different way.
How often should someone recalibrate?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if there's a standard answer, but I think that and that's goes back to, again, why it's so important to talk to people that you know and trust, that can show you a blind spot that appropriately named, that you don't know about, because it is a blind spot. And so to have that outside view and having someone that you know and trust to tell you that, hey, you ever think about doing this? Or I noticed that you don't do that, why? And then recalibrate that way. But data is everything, and you got to make sure that you're keeping the right data so that you can go back and look.
And speaking of data, if they started bringing up things like, oh, the world's in, the world's in a tornado, everything's going like that, I would question that and say, well, give me more context, right? Because I'm going to spit off 3 industries right now that are absolutely killing it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what those industries are, right? But the fitness world is absolutely, in-home fitness is absolutely dominating right now.
Yep.
Let's just say, right? But if you were to talk to someone, Tesla is absolutely killing it now, it sounds like, right? Apple is absolutely killing it. Things around that kind of remote communication telecommunication is probably absolutely killing it right now. I don't know. Those would be my guesses, right?
Yeah.
But when someone says, oh, people aren't spending money, I would say, I need you to really prove that point.
Right.
Because and then the next point of that is, where are you getting your information, and are you consuming way too much of that?
Right.
Because that information, anyone that's really a go-getter, again, realize that 2020 was the year to get ahead, the year to move even further ahead than to listen to the world's going to crumble, the United States is going to crumble type of thing. Yeah. Because yes, I understand that there are plenty of people who have had really, really bad years.
Right.
But there are a lot of people who had really good years, and you don't hear that because we're hearing this other narrative.
People might not be spending money on Carnival, but at the same time, they may be taking that money that they would spend on a cruise, and then now they are remodeling their bathroom, or they're remodeling a room in their house. So home construction is killing it, is because people are just reallocating how and where they're spending their money.
Well, and maybe you had been thinking to yourself, I really want to rethink the way that we do business. And 2020 allowed you to really think about the way that you redid business, right? We got a company, J&A Racing, locally. They're supposed to be on the show in a couple of weeks, or they will be on the show in a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. But maybe they had been thinking about, hey, how do we rethink the race world, right? And now they're coming out with virtual events. There's other ways for them they're doing a trail run, which they had never done before. And so you have to be thinking, again, it's think about those 2 examples, the Starbucks on one side of the street, they move across the street, 1.5 doors or blocks down the road. And the bigger space actually is worse for them.
Yeah.
Or that one restaurant that I mentioned, that was 3 doors down, not to be confused with the band.
Right.
If I go crazy, then will you still be my kryptonite? Oh God. January 7th, Zach Miller Says is singing. In college, that's we would do karaoke, and that's the song that I'd always sing. Right. But that company that had 30 seats then tripled in size and actually failed within a couple of weeks. There's a book that Damon John wrote called The Power of Broke. And the premise of the story is, when you act like you have no money, you can make a lot better decisions.
Right.
So as a business owner, as a person, what can you do to think about the power of broke? I think it's very, very, you just you don't get crazy with spending. You don't over indulge in things that are unnecessary, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I was optimistic in 2020, and I remain optimistic for 2021.
Well, I think it was a good year for you. You know, Boston qualified. That's a big check off the box.
Yeah.
And it'll be exciting to see you actually do that when races
resume.
Have they announced what they're going to do with that? Do you think they'll have it?
I guess they're, last I've heard, they're hoping to do something in September, but the April race, when it traditionally happens, that has been postponed.
How many people normally run that race?
I don't know. Tens of thousands, though. 30, 40,000 maybe. A lot.
You think, what are your predictions for 21?
Well, a lot of this is going to be, I think, just from a psychological standpoint, how fast they can roll out all the vaccinations. I hear a lot of people talking about that are already considering this the Roaring 20s. That people are just they're just itching to get out and get back to going to concerts and going on vacations and traveling and doing the different things that they want to do. But I think that a lot of this is going to be tied to how quickly they can get the vaccines out. But just to gain the confidence of the people.
Well, I think when you say that, I think we look at it now, January 7th of 2021. In America, I think you look at, doomsday as middle of March 2020, and that's 10 and a half months of basically saying stay home. And other things associated with that, but basically stay home, right?
Yeah.
And will there be the exact same amount or more from a positive push saying get out of your house?
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing is for sure, it's not going back. Certain things may go back, but it's not, business is not going to go back to the way that it was. So you've got to continue to innovate, to find whatever is going to be that secret sauce for you to succeed. You've got to innovate in some way to figure that out.
And it shouldn't have taken 2020 for you to figure that out.
That's right. That's right.
It always shocked me when someone's like, how do you do a Zoom call? Press record.
Yeah.
That's it. Oh, wow, this is a lot easier. Yeah, why weren't you doing this before? Why are you flying all these people in?
Yeah.
Again, maybe there was extra fat in places that didn't need to be. For me, sure. 2021 will be I don't know, the year of, what did I say, compounding?
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it.
I hope that people had started. If not, just like all of your financial people, they'll say, the best time to start was 10 years ago. If not, then it was yesterday. Well, today,
right.
Do something today, do it tomorrow, no days off, whatever that thing is, and keep that thing compounding. Because when we have this conversation on January 7th, 2022,
you're going to wish you started today.
And I think that's something that more people need to talk about, the compounding effect of just life, of business, of fitness, of all of that, of all of the above. So I'm excited. I'm always optimistic about stuff. I think I'm a glass full guy. Just full. Glass full. It doesn't need to be half. Doesn't need to be, empty. The glass is full. Let's just go.
Especially when you focus on the things that you can control.
I am hoping that in 2022 or in 2021 this year, I do have a new poster of The Rock on my wall. I am hoping that somehow that one changes, because him in his briefs is just too much for me. I can't take this anymore. Maybe I'll get a haircut. I don't know.
There you go.
Do you have a goal in mind? So the big goal of 2020 was, I think, was to qualify for Boston.
Yeah.
Is there a big one in the hopper for this year?
No, well, I mean, really, the big thing is I want to make sure I don't take any steps backwards. Maintain. I'll steal your, compound some certain things, and I know where I want to end up, and it's just a matter of just charting that territory to keep on progressing forward. But I don't know if I didn't set out to have any solid goals. Run 365 days.
At 7 miles a day with that?
No, I reduced my goal. I did.
Oh, that's only 2,500.
Yeah, I don't want to put that kind of pressure on myself. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, then that's fine. But I
Realistic,
forget.
unrealistic goals. I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, I want to enjoy the journey.
I remember a few years ago, I had set out saying, oh, I want to do this many miles of something. And I did no fact checking on figuring out what that was.
Yeah,
I think it was 10,000 miles on the bike, something like that. After I'd been doing like, I don't know, let's say 1,500 the year before, I wanted to do 10x that, 8x that.
yeah,
Yeah, I can do that. And then really quickly into it, I was like, this is not possible. And so
yeah,
I set a different number. And I thought that was more realistic. And actually, what's funny is this year, where I did a ton of working out, I still didn't hit that number.
Oh wow.
And so it's like, is that number achievable? And I think the answer
Yeah,
is yes, but not in the things that I'm doing in the way that I'm doing. If I was just to solo do that thing, maybe. But
yeah,
because I'm doing different stuff, I think it does that. And that's what I would tell other people too, is focus on one thing, right? Focus, not to get that confused with some of the other stuff we're talking about, but like focus, have one kind of goal in mind, right?
yeah,
And so you have a lot of people from a goal setting perspective that give out like 15 things. Oh, these are the 15 things I want to do this year.
right.
Well, which one of those is the main one? And actually, that's something that I've stolen from Mark Zuckerberg, where his whole thing was like how many users on Facebook.
Right.
That was the only metric that he cared about, at least early on, right?
Sure.
And million subscribers, 10 million subscribers, 1 billion subscribers. That's kind of how I look at goal settings.
Yeah.
Like, what's that one thing? And I think that's powerful. So then you're going after that one thing, and when you hit it, it's like Yahtzee.
That's it.
Well, Tim, it's been an absolute pleasure, an honor, an absolute whatever. I don't. It hasn't been an honor. I don't know why people say that. It's just been fun. It's been a great ride.
Yep.
Looking forward to a jam-packed 2021 with you and this show. So thank you guys for watching the Fervent 4 each and every Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. We had a fun year planned. Maybe I'll shave my head live on air. Unlikely. Looking forward to eating a lot of pancakes, a lot of maple syrup, and a lot of pieces. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.
So long.
Farewell. I'm not going to sing sound music. Peace.